carried away. Can we join in?
Hey viewers, it's your half-ass correspondent James Kalm, the guy on the bike. It's a chilly Friday evening in Chelsea. We're on 26th Street. Special shout out to our friends in Paris, Rome, and Cuernavaca, Mexico. We're running here to Greene Naftali. Haven't checked the clock, so we'll see how much time we got. Stay tuned. And we're going to take a look at an exhibition by Richard Hawkins, the Forest Bess Variations. Interesting things that we should be paying attention to tonight is that they have ended the mask mandates, and so theoretically no one has to wear a mask. And I'm looking around and I saw maybe one or two people, but gosh, this is the first opening I've been to in many months where everybody wasn't swaddled in masks. Well, I'm not familiar with the work of Richard Hawkins, but I was working in the studio and took a little break about 4 and looked at the gallery listings, and as soon as I saw something related to Forrest Bess, it caught my attention, and I decided I would come over and check this out. So the title of the show is Forest Bess Variations. Okay, this piece is Regeneration of the Self 2022. Oil on canvas and artist frame. This is 23 by 18 inches. Well, as someone who is a part of the Williamsburg art scene, going all the way back to the early 90s, Forrest Bess was almost a patron saint of a lot of the painters there. This is Apis Lapis 2022 oil on canvas. This is 12 by 15. I still remember going to editorial meetings with Fong Bui with the Book and Whale, and he had a Forrest Bess that he had inherited from Meyer Shapiro, and I remember spending hours sitting around the table talking about the editorial things, but glancing over Fong's shoulder and admiring the painting. This is Hidden Revealed, oil on canvas on board, an artist's frame. Okay, let's look at some of the text here. Bulbous urethra, prostate via membranous urethra, prostate stimulator, and receptive organ. Passage of time. I think this is interesting that Richard has decided to kind of reinterpret a lot of Forrest Bess's paintings. I'll give you a quick historical rundown of Forrest Bess. He was a painter living in Texas. I guess started out his career in the 30s into the 40s. At some point he had a psychological breakdown, and I guess went into therapy, and part of the therapy was painting. And I guess at some point they even got him to where he was teaching other patients to paint. And at some point he got out of the hospital, went back to his family's bait shop. I think it was on a little island outside of Brownsville, Texas. And he lived in a little shed, a little shack by the seashore for years, and made paintings. And well, the story is that he would actually have these visions between waking and sleeping, and he'd train himself to capture the images. Okay, this is the Supreme Becoming. This is 33 by 41. I like Richard's paint handling. So he's doing a lot of this with a little palette knife. Anyway, Forrest Bess started communicating with people in New York. I think Meyer Shapiro was one of them, and was actually shown by Betty Parsons' gallery for years. Okay, Dionysus. Anyway, Forrest had a whole theory about symbols, about the sexes, the morphoditic quality of being somehow asexual or between the sexes. Anyway, his ideas about hermaphroditism and almost a metaphysical balancing of the urges and the sex drives caused him to do some self-surgery in which he tried to convert himself. At that point they decided he was had gone a little too far, and I think they institutionalized him at some point after that. This is titled Passage to Perfection. One of the things I'm enjoying is that Richard is sort of taking some of these basic compositions and kind of riffing on them like a jazz musician might take something by, Pat Boone, and jazz it up and change it and turn it into a whole different piece of art. This is titled Fons Mercurialis 2022. This is 36 by 41. So in a lot of these, I'm kind of familiar with some of these images, and it's interesting to see how Richard has changed the colors, bumped up the textures and things. And of course, this is To the Limits of Consciousness 2022, oil on canvas and artist frame. This is 20 by 20. This would be about as big as any Forrest Bess painting that I've seen. So when Richard does something like this, that's probably about 4 or 5 times larger than the original. Anyway, Forrest Bess was showing in New York and ended up in an institution, I guess, in Texas. I've heard anecdotally that when Julian Schnabel was a young art student down around Brownsville, that he actually went over and visited Forrest Bess. I don't know whether that's true. That's what I've heard. This is titled The Penetration 2022. And Forrest Bess was very good with these kinds of odd patterns. And I think Richard's doing a pretty, interesting job of playing with some of Bess's tropes, his various symbols. It's got an entire dictionary of things he was using. It's titled The Coming Together. Okay, so I've seen Dionysus scribbled into a lot of these. I guess I should read the press release again. Anyway, so Forrest Bess is getting some attention in New York. A few critics are looking at the work. And then he dies, and a lot of this stuff was forgotten. And then I think probably maybe in the early 80s, that's when I started to see some of this work. I think maybe Ilyana Sonab had a little show of his work. And I was out in Utah, and I saw another collection of his work, I believe at Utah State. He probably had 20 pieces. I think he was actually fairly prolific, and because he worked small, he could work fairly fast, and I guess a lot of this was very urgent, the kind of thing that you would have to capture before the memory of your little vision would fade. So between the two, it's a lozenge. Okay, so we've seen another variation of this one. The celestial body. Well, it would be interesting to talk to Richard and find out about his ideas of riffing on someone else's work like this. How much artistic license did he allow himself? Did he feel like it was important for him to at least maintain enough of the Forrest Bess compositions that he could call them interpretations? Putrefaccio 2022. Some silver paint there. Nice. Here's another interesting factoid. I bumped into John Yao on the street about a month ago, and I was mentioning I saw his article that he published about a trove of Forrest Bess paintings that have been discovered, I think, someplace in a warehouse in Texas, and they were showing them at a little project space way out on Long Island, maybe Montauk. The Temple of Dionysus at Delos, 33 by 41. So I spoke to John and I said, I wanted to go out and see the show, but that's about 3 hours drive away from Brooklyn. And he said the show was interesting. The problem was that because the pieces had been stored in a bad place. Some of them were severely damaged. And I thought to myself, that might even make them more interesting. This sacrificial bull as I was saying, I like the kind of the bumped up colors that Richard is using, and well, he's very good with his textural things. Something like this, you see kind of a weird washy, rinsy thing. Then you've got the built up areas with a cowl knife, and then the scraped down flat areas. This is 12 7/8 by 15 3/4. Now this would be about the size of your average Forrest Bess painting. I think the other thing that's nice is that Richard is making his own frames, and that was also a very integral part of Forrest Bess's practice. This Black Moon Gets Bigger 2021 oil on canvas, artist frame 12 by 16. One of the things that always fascinated me about Forrest Bess was that he was able to use a small format, very simple basic group of shapes and forms, a certain amount of patterning, but he was so creative that he could put them together in an infinite variety of ways using color, texture, brushwork, and you would never get tired of looking at the work. Dionysus Silver and Red 2021. Look at some works on paper. Variation number 1. Okay, so we've got some of the notes. So the cadmium red deep is male principle. The pink is hermaphrodite integration of spirit and body. Gray is sperm conductor of sex hormones, and the white is interpol and receptive. Okay. Variation number 2. Oil and pencil on paper, 11 by 15. Notations here. I wonder if these are actually based on Forrest Bess's personal notes. Probably. I guess Bess did spend a lot of time writing and categorizing about his images and theories and color. Legend 2022. Okay, so now we've got a little index of the various images he was playing with. One of the reasons I wanted to come to the show is that I have posted videos of Forrest Bess exhibitions, and I have actually made the statement that I might have put more images of Forrest Bess on the internet than anybody else in the world. There was a show at Haunch of Venison probably about 8 or 10 years ago that had had more Forrest Bess paintings than I think any public exhibition maybe ever. And I paired that with the Robert Gober room that Robert curated for the Whitney Biennial. So that's all together. You can go back in the files. Maybe I'll link that up below. James Kalm reporting on Richard Hawkins, the Forest Bess Variations, here at Greene Naftali. You can like this, share, link it up to your social media sites, and you can subscribe, and you can leave your thoughts, ideas, comments, criticisms, reviews, and suggestions below. And as always, we just ask you to say thank you, Kate. Thanks, Francis.
Oh my God.
Thanks, Francis.
Thank you.